The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched far beyond what most eyes could see. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that moved through the air like gentle waves. The dome above them showed stars from every corner of known space, each one representing worlds where different species lived and worked together. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of it all. His green scales caught the light from above as he raised his forearms to get everyone's attention. The hall grew quiet. Even the smallest whispers stopped. All eyes turned to look at the tall figure who had asked to speak today. "Friends of the Council," Zethkar began, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive room. "Today I wish to share with you a story of our greatest victory. A story that shows how the Zethkari Empire protects this galaxy from dangerous threats." Many in the crowd shifted in their seats. The Zethkari were known for their pride and their love of war stories. But the Council was polite. They would listen. 500,000 years ago, Zethkar continued, our scouts found a threat in a small system near the edge of the galaxy, a system they called Sol. On the third planet from their star, a violent species had grown strong. They called themselves humans. A hologram appeared above the ambassador's head. It showed a blue and green world spinning slowly in space. The planet looked peaceful from far away. "Beautiful even? Do not let this fool you," Zethkar said, seeing how some council members looked at the pretty world. These humans were killers. They fought wars on their own planet. They destroyed forests and poisoned rivers. They killed their own kind for reasons that made no sense. The hologram changed. Now it showed images of human cities. Tall buildings reached toward the sky. Strange vehicles moved through the streets. The humans themselves looked small and weak. They had no scales or claws, no extra arms or tentacles. They looked soft. They had no fur to keep them warm, Zethkar said with a laugh. No natural weapons to defend themselves. Yet they claimed to be the strongest hunters on their world. They said they were apex predators. He made the words sound foolish. Apex predators with no fangs, no claws, no poison. How could such weak beings threaten anyone? Some of the younger council members laughed. Others whispered to their neighbors about how silly humans sounded. But we learned the truth, Zethkar said, his voice growing serious. These humans were not just violent. They were smart in dangerous ways. They built weapons that could destroy entire cities. They created machines that could think. They even tried to leave their planet and spread to other worlds. The hologram showed human spaceships. They were simple and crude compared to the beautiful vessels that belonged to council races. The ships looked like metal boxes with fire coming out the back. Our greatest scientists studied them, Zethkar continued. They learned that humans could adapt to any world. They could eat almost any food. They could survive in heat or cold. They bred fast and lived almost anywhere. If we let them spread across the galaxy, they would take over everything. An old being from the Wise Collective raised one of her many arms. What made you think they were so dangerous? Many species build simple weapons. Zethkar's eyes grew, bright with excitement. Ah, but humans were different. They did not just build weapons. They built ideas. They had something they called imagination. They could think of things that had never been before. This made them very dangerous. He pressed a button on his control device. The hologram changed again. Now it showed humans working together. Some were building, others were creating art. Still others were exploring their world. See how they work together, Zethkar said. But also see how they compete. They help each other, then fight each other. They love their families, then go to war with strangers. They were unpredictable, chaos makers. The ambassador from the Silicon hierarchy spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Your evidence seems limited. These images could show any primitive species. True, Zethkar admitted, but we have more proof. He smiled, showing his sharp teeth. We have proof because we solved the problem. We removed the threat before it could grow. The hologram now showed Zethkari warships. They were huge and beautiful, with weapons that glowed like small suns. Hundreds of them floated in space around the human solar system. Our fleet was magnificent, Zethkar said with pride. The best ships, the strongest weapons, the smartest commanders. We gave the humans one chance to surrender, one chance to accept our rule and live as our servants. What did they say? Asked someone from the crowd. Zethkar laughed. It was not a nice sound. They said no. They said they would rather die free than live as slaves. So we gave them what they wanted. The hologram showed the attack. Zethkari ships fired bright beams of energy at human worlds. Cities disappeared in flashes of light. The ships that tried to escape were destroyed one by one, space filled with wreckage and fire. It took 43 of their years, Zethkar said. They fought hard. I will give them that. They were creative in their fighting. They built new weapons during the war. They used tricks we had never seen before. But in the end, their creativity could not beat our power. The images showed the final battle around Earth. Human ships, now larger and more advanced than the first ones, fought desperately against the Zethkari fleet. But there were too few of them. One by one, they were destroyed. The last human transmission came from their homeworld, Zethkar said. His voice grew soft, like he was telling a sad story. A female spoke for all of them. She said they would never give up. She said that somewhere, somehow, humans would survive and return. She said they would remember what we did. The hologram showed the final moment. Earth, the beautiful blue and green world, became a ball of fire. The oceans boiled away. The land melted. Nothing could live there anymore. Then there was silence, Zethkar said. No more human signals. No more human ships. No more humans anywhere in the galaxy. The threat was ended. The council chamber was very quiet. Some beings looked sad. Others looked impressed. A few looked worried. "Why do you tell us this old story?" asked the representative from the peaceful swimmers. "This was long ago. Why does it matter now?" Zethkar spread all four of his arms wide. "Because the galaxy should know. The Zethkari Empire has always protected the peace. When dangerous species threaten the order we have built, we stop them. We keep the galaxy safe for civilized beings, like all of you." He pressed his control device one more time. The hologram showed a map of the galaxy. Green areas marked places where the Zethkari had influence. The green areas were growing larger. "Today we face new threats," Zethkar said. "Pirates in the Outer Rim, rebels who do not respect council law, wild species who refuse to join our civilized society. But do not worry. Just as we solved the human problem, we will solve these problems too." Many council members nodded. The Zethkari were strong. If dangerous humans had once existed, it was good that they were gone. But in the back of the great hall, a figure in a dark cloak sat very still. Under the cloak, hidden scanners worked quietly. They detected something that should not exist: genetic markers, DNA patterns, quantum signatures that matched the old human records. The cloaked figure had been tracking these signals for months. Ships with unknown designs had been seen at the edge of the galaxy. Battles had been fought with weapons that used impossible science. And always, when other ships tried to talk to these mysterious vessels, they got the same message: "We remember." As Zethkar finished his speech and the council began to discuss other matters, the cloaked figure slipped away. There were people who needed to know what the scanners had found, people who would understand what it meant. The Zethkari ambassador had made one mistake in his story. He had assumed that destroying Earth meant destroying all humans. He had not considered that a species smart enough to worry him might also be smart enough to plan for their own destruction. In the dark spaces between stars, in places where the Zethkari had never looked, something had been growing. Something that remembered every word of that final transmission from Earth. Something that had spent 500,000 years learning and waiting and becoming something new. The galaxy was about to discover that reports of humanity's death had been greatly exaggerated, and the being in the cloak was one of the few who suspected what was coming. As the council session ended and thousands of beings flew away in their ships, none of them noticed the small changes happening in the darkness around them. Sensors that should have worked perfectly began to malfunction. Computer systems started recording data that made no sense, and deep in the space between galaxies, something vast and patient began to move. The SCI-FI had boasted about their greatest victory. Soon the galaxy would learn whether they had really won anything at all. News of the SCI-FI ambassador's speech spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In every space station, every trading post, every academy, and every cantina, beings talked about the story they had heard. Most of them were laughing on. The crystal world of Veltara Prime, Dr. Shimmering thought of Dawn, was giving a lecture to her students. The crystalline being's body glowed with different colors as she spoke, each hue showing her emotions. Right now, she was glowing with the soft blue light of amusement. "Class," she said, her voice ringing like music through the crystal halls of the university. "Today, we will discuss something called historical fiction. This is when beings make up stories about the past to make themselves look important. Students, young crystal beings whose bodies sparkled with curiosity, gathered closer. Their teacher was known throughout the galaxy as one of the best experts on ancient history. The SCI-FI claim they destroyed a species called humans 500,000 years ago, Dr. Shimmering thought continued. This is clearly impossible. Let me show you why. She activated a holographic display that filled the classroom with images and data. First, look at the timeline. 500,000 years ago, the SCI-FI were barely capable of space travel. Their own records show they had only just invented faster-than-light engines. How could they have fought a galactic war? One student's body flashed with the green light of questions. But teacher, what if the humans were very weak? An excellent question, the teacher replied, her glow shifting to the yellow of approval. But look at the evidence the SCI-FI showed. They claim humans had advanced technology, ships that could travel between stars, weapons that could destroy cities. If this were true, how could a species that had just learned to leave their home system defeat them so easily? Another student glowed with confusion. Maybe the SCI-FI were lying about being primitive back then. Also possible, Dr. Shimmering thought. Agreed. But then we have another problem. Where is the evidence? When great wars happen, they leave traces, destroyed worlds, wreckage fields, radiation signatures that last for millions of years. Our deep space surveys have found no evidence of any great battle in the Sol system they mentioned. She changed the hologram to show star charts. In fact, our best maps do not even show a system called Sol in the area the SCI-FI described. There are several yellow stars with planets, but none match their story. The students' bodies flickered with the orange light of understanding. Their teacher was showing them how to think like real scientists, how to question stories that seemed too good to be true. The most likely explanation is that the SCI-FI invented this story to make themselves seem powerful and wise, she concluded. They want other species to fear them and respect them for protecting the galaxy from dangerous enemies. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in 1,000 different places. In the great libraries of the Eternal Archive, ancient beings who remembered when the galaxy was young laughed softly at the SCI-FI claims. Keeper Vast Memory of all things was older than most stars. His metal body had been storing information for millions of years. Young ones, he told the scholars who came to seek his wisdom, I have seen many species rise and fall. I have watched empires grow and crumble. In all my years, I have never heard of these humans. If they had been important enough to threaten the galaxy, I would remember them. His metal fingers tapped against his chest where his main memory cores were stored. The Zethkari are known for making up grand stories about their past. Last century, they claim to have invented faster-than-light travel. Before that, they said they were the first species to discover quantum mechanics. None of these claims were true. The scholars nodded. Keeper Vast Memory was never wrong about historical facts. His memory banks contained the real history of the galaxy, not the made-up stories that species told about themselves. In the wandering fleets of the nomad clans, ship captains gathered around glowing fires in their council chambers. Captain Stormrider of the vessel. Endless Journey had spent her whole life traveling between the stars. She had seen more of the galaxy than most beings could imagine. The Zethkari want us to believe they fought a great war, she said to her fellow captains. But where are the songs? Where are the stories? When great events happen, they become part of the oral traditions of every spacefaring people. We nomads remember everything. We sing of the Crystal Wars. We tell tales of the Silicon Rebellion. We keep alive the memory of the Great Plague that nearly destroyed the core worlds. She stood up and spread her arms wide. But not one of our oldest songs mentions humans. Not one of our most ancient stories speaks of a species called by that name. If they had been real, if they had been important, we would remember them. The other captains agreed. The nomad clans had been traveling space longer than almost any other group. Their songs and stories went back further than most written records. If the humans had existed, the nomads would know. But not everyone was laughing. In the dark corners of the galaxy's underworld, different conversations were taking place. Smugglers, pirates, and information brokers spoke in whispers about strange things they had seen. Captain Razor Edge was a being who asked no questions and broke any law for the right price. His ship, the Silent Dagger, carried cargo that other vessels would not touch. He was feared throughout the criminal underworld for his skill and his complete lack of morals. But right now, Razor Edge was afraid. "I'm telling you," he said to his first officer, a scaled being whose name no one knew. "Something is happening out there. Something the fancy council types don't want to admit." They were sitting in his private cabin aboard the Silent Dagger. The room was dark and full of stolen treasures from across the galaxy. But Razor Edge was not looking at his wealth. He was staring at a recording device. "Play it again," he told his first officer. The device activated, showing a recording from their ship's external cameras. It had been taken 3 months ago in the void between, the empty space at the galaxy's edge where only smugglers and fugitives dared to go. The recording showed space that should have been empty. But it was not empty. Something was moving out. "There! Something huge!" "Look at the size of that thing," Razor Edge whispered. "It's bigger than a space station, bigger than most moons. But it doesn't show up on our main sensors. Only the cameras caught it." The shape in the recording was hard to see clearly. It seemed to bend light around itself. But what they could see was unlike any ship design in the galactic databases. It was organic-looking, like it had grown instead of being built, and it moved in ways that should have been impossible. "When we tried to scan it, what happened?" Razor Edge asked. His first officer shivered. "Our computers crashed. But before they did, they showed us something. The ship's quantum signature. It matched patterns from the old databases. Patterns that were supposed to be extinct." "Human patterns," Razor Edge said quietly. They had not been the only ones to see strange things. Across the criminal networks, stories were spreading. Ships that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. Battles where raiders found their weapons would not work. Rescue missions where mysterious vessels saved merchant convoys from pirates and then vanished without asking for payment or even giving their names. Always, when other ships tried to make contact with these mysterious rescuers, they got the same message: "We remember." Most people who heard these stories did not believe them. The criminals and smugglers who told them were not known for their honesty. The recordings they claimed to have were always blurry or damaged. The witnesses were always pirates and thieves whose word meant nothing to respectable beings. But a few people were paying attention. A few people were collecting these stories and putting them together. They were starting to see a pattern that the rest of the galaxy was missing. On the trading station Deep Market, an information broker called the Whisper was known for buying and selling secrets. No one knew what species the Whisper belonged to. They always wore a cloak that hid their entire body. But they had the best information network in the galaxy. The Whisper was building a file full of reports about impossible ships and mysterious rescues, a file full of recordings that showed things that should not exist, a file full of quantum signatures that matched extinct species. Someone is coming, the Whisper said to their most trusted agent, a being whose loyalty had been bought with enough credits to buy a small planet. Someone the galaxy forgot, someone who has been hiding and waiting and growing strong. The agent looked at the data the Whisper had collected. You think the Zethkari were telling the truth? You think humans really existed? The Whisper's hidden form shifted under their cloak. I think the Zethkari told part of the truth. I think they did fight humans. I think they did destroy human worlds. But I do not think they won. What do you mean? I think the humans did exactly what their last message said they would do. I think they survived. I think they hid, and I think they have been waiting for the right time to come back. The agent felt a chill run through their body. Come back to do what? The Whisper was quiet for a long moment. When they finally spoke, their voice was barely above a whisper. To show the galaxy what 500,000 years of evolution can do to a species that refuses to die. While the galaxy laughed at the Zethkari's ancient boast, while scientists explained why the story could not be true, while historians dismissed it as propaganda, the evidence was growing. Deep in the dark places where only criminals and outcasts looked, signs were appearing that something was stirring in the void, something that remembered what had been done to it, something that had used 500,000 years to become something new. Something that was almost ready to remind the galaxy that there are worse things than extinction. There is evolution. The refugee convoy moved slowly through the darkness between stars. 12 ships carried the last survivors of the Gentle Wanderer colony on Peaceful Harbor. Their world had been beautiful once, with crystal lakes and singing flowers that made music in the wind. Now it was gone, another victim of Zethkari expansion. Captain Soft Swimming in Starlight stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the stars ahead. Her people were known throughout the galaxy for their kind hearts and peaceful ways. They had never hurt anyone. They had welcomed the Zethkari as friends when the green-scaled warriors first came to their world. The Zethkari had smiled and spoken of friendship and trade. Then they had moved their own people onto Peaceful Harbor. Then they had made new laws that the Gentle Wanderers could not follow. Then they had declared the Gentle Wanderers to be criminals for trying to keep their own customs. In the end, Soft Swimming and her people had been forced to leave their home or be destroyed. They had chosen to leave, hoping to find a new world, where they could live in peace. But the Zethkari had not been content to let them go. "Captain," called her navigation officer from across the bridge, "we have ships approaching, fast attack vessels. They are not responding to our peace signals." Soft Swimming felt her heart sink. She had hoped they were far enough from Zethkari space to be safe, but it seemed their former neighbors were not willing to let them escape. "How many ships?" she asked. 8 combat vessels, heavy weapons. They are moving to surround us." The attacking ships were sleek and dangerous-looking. Their hulls were painted with the red markings of Zethkari military forces. As they moved into position around the refugee convoy, their weapon systems powered up with an angry red glow. "Attention! Gentle Wanderer vessels!" came a harsh voice over the communication system. "You are carrying stolen property from Peaceful Harbor. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Soft Swimming knew this was not true. Her people had taken only their personal belongings when they left their world, but the Zethkari did not care about truth. They wanted to make sure no other species would dare to resist their expansion. "We have nothing that belongs to you," she broadcast back. "We ask only for safe passage to find a new home." "You exist," the Zethkari commander replied. "That is theft enough. You stole resources that could have gone to proper Zethkari citizens. Now you will pay the price." The refugee ships had no weapons. They were transport vessels built for carrying families and supplies, not for fighting wars. Their shields were weak and designed only to protect against space debris and radiation. "All ships," Soft Swimming announced to her fleet, "prepare for emergency scatter. If we spread out, maybe some of us can escape." But even as she gave the order, she knew it was hopeless. The Zethkari ships were faster and better armed. They would hunt down the refugees one by one. The children sleeping in the lower decks would never see another sunrise. "Captain," her sensor operator called out in confusion, "I am reading something strange. Space itself is changing." On the main screen, the stars began to move. Not the normal movement of ships traveling through space, but something impossible. The stars were bending, stretching, as if reality itself was being twisted into new shapes. Then space tore open. It was not like the normal opening of a hyperspace jump or a wormhole. This was different. Space simply split apart like fabric being cut with a knife. Through the tear, Soft Swimming could see another place entirely, a place that glowed with soft, warm light. Ships began to emerge from the tear, but they were unlike any vessels in the galactic databases. They looked alive somehow, as if they had grown instead of being built. Their hulls curved and flowed like the shells of deep-sea creatures. They moved through space with a grace that seemed impossible for machines. "Unknown vessels," the Zethkari commander broadcast. "Identify yourselves immediately. You are interfering with a lawful military operation." The strange ships did not answer with words. Instead, they began to move. What happened next made no sense to anyone watching. The new ships did not fire weapons or launch missiles. They simply flowed around the Zethkari attack vessels like water flowing around rocks. As they moved, the Zethkari ships began to slow down. "What's happening to our engines?" one of the Zethkari pilots screamed over the communication channels. "We're losing power!" "Weapons are offline," called another. "All systems are shutting down." One by one, the Zethkari ships went dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapons powered down. Their life support systems remained working, but everything else simply turned off. The crews inside were unharmed but completely helpless. Then one of the strange ships moved close to the refugee convoy. It was beautiful to look at, with flowing lines that seemed to change and shift as Soft Swimming watched. On its hull, symbols appeared that glowed with their own light. "Refugee convoy," came a voice over the communication system. It spoke in perfect, gentle wanderer language with the right tone and accent. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Remnant Fleet. Are any of your people injured?" Soft Swimming stared at the communication panel. The name meant nothing to her, but something about the voice was comforting. It sounded kind and concerned, like someone who genuinely cared about strangers. We are unharmed," she replied carefully. "But who are you? Your ships are not in any of our databases." "We are friends," the voice replied. "We have been watching what happened to your world. We are sorry for your loss. Peaceful Harbor was beautiful." "You knew our world?" Soft Swimming asked in surprise. "We know many worlds. We have been traveling the dark spaces for a long time, watching and learning. We try to help when we can." Another voice cut in over the communication channel. It was the Zethkari commander, sounding angry and confused. "Unknown vessels, what have you done to our ships? Our systems are completely offline." The voice of Captain Chen answered calmly. "Your crews are safe. Your life support is working. Your weapons are not. Consider this a learning experience. Learning experience! The Zethkari commander shouted. Do you know who we are? We are the Zethkari Empire. We demand that you restore our ships immediately. There was a pause. When Captain Chen spoke again, her voice had changed. It was still kind. But there was something underneath it now. Something old and deep and very, very dangerous. We know exactly who you are, she said quietly. We remember what you did to Peaceful Harbor. We remember what you did to the singing pools of harmony. We remember what you did to 17 other worlds in the past 10 years. And we remember what you tried to do to us long ago. Us? The Zethkari commander asked. Who are you? We are the humans of Terra. We are the species you thought you destroyed 500,000 years ago. We are the children of Earth, and we have been watching you. The communication channels went completely silent. Even the background noise of the ship's engines seemed to quiet down. Soft Swimming felt her breathing stop. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the Zethkari ambassador's speech about destroying the humans. Everyone knew it was supposed to be an ancient legend. Impossible, the Zethkari commander whispered. Humans are extinct. We destroyed them all. You destroyed our worlds, Captain Chen replied. You destroyed our cities. You destroyed our bodies, but you could not destroy what we really were. And in trying to eliminate us, you gave us something we had never had before. What? Time. 500,000 years of time to grow beyond what we were, to become something new, to learn patience and wisdom and power you cannot imagine. One of the strange ships moved closer to the Gentle Wanderer convoy. As it approached, Soft Swimming could see details on its hull that had not been visible before. The symbols that glowed there were not just decorations. They were words, written in a language she had never seen but somehow understood. The words said, We remember the fallen. We protect the innocent. We do not forget. Gentle Wanderers, Captain Chen's voice continued, now speaking directly to the refugees. You are under our protection now. We will escort you to a safe world where you can build new homes. Your children will grow up free. Why would you help us? Soft Swimming asked. You do not know us. Because once we were refugees. 2. Because once our children were in danger and no one came to help. Because we learned something in the dark spaces between the stars. What did you learn? We learned that the strong should protect the weak. We learned that those who have power should use it to help those who have none. We learned that the best way to honor those who died is to save those who live. The Zethkari commander tried to interrupt. You cannot do this. The Galactic Council will hear about this. You are interfering with legal military operations. Captain Chen's laugh was not cruel, but it was not entirely kind either. The Galactic Council? The same council that watched 17 worlds burn and did nothing? The same council that calls your expansion necessary for galactic stability? By all means, tell them. Tell them the humans have returned. Tell them we are keeping our promise. What promise? The promise we made 500,000 years ago in the last transmission from Earth. We said we would survive. We said we would remember. We said we would return. Today, we begin to keep that promise. The human ships began to move again, surrounding the refugee convoy in a protective formation. The Zethkari attack vessels drifted helplessly nearby. There, crews alive but powerless. Wait! Soft Swimming called out. What will happen to them? She pointed toward the disabled Zethkari ships. Their life support will keep them alive until rescue ships arrive, Captain Chen replied. We do not kill the helpless, even when they deserve it. That is one of the things we learned in our long exile. Mercy is not weakness. It is strength that chooses not to destroy. As the convoy prepared to leave, escorted by their mysterious protectors, Soft Swimming had one more question. Captain Chen, how many of you survived? How many humans are there now? The answer came quietly, and it made Soft Swimming's blood run cold with its implications. Enough! We are enough! The strange ships guided the refugee convoy away from the scene, moving through space in ways that seemed to ignore the normal laws of physics. Behind them, the Zethkari crews sat in their dark ships, trying to understand what had just happened. Word of the encounter would spread quickly through the galaxy. The criminals and outcasts who had been seeing strange ships would finally be believed. The scientists who had dismissed the possibility of human survival would have to reconsider their conclusions, and in the great halls of power throughout the galaxy, leaders would begin to ask a question that would keep them awake at night. If the humans had survived, if they had grown strong enough to disable Zethkari warships without firing a shot, what else had they learned to do in 500,000 years of exile? The galaxy was about to find out that some species do not stay. Dead when you kill them, some species come back stronger. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in secret. Not since the Great Plague of the Core Worlds had all the major species gathered with such urgency. The Great Hall that usually echoed with debates about trade agreements, and mining rights now hummed with fear and confusion. Reports had been flooding in for weeks. Zethkari fleets found drifting dead in space with their crews unharmed but their ships powerless. Rescue operations that appeared out of nowhere to save merchant convoys from pirates. Strange vessels that moved through space in ways that broke the known laws of physics. And always, when other ships tried to communicate with these mysterious rescuers, the same message: we remember. Supreme Chancellor Brightstar of Wisdom called the session to order with 3 strikes of her ceremonial staff. The ancient being had served as the council's leader for over 1,000 years. She had seen species rise and fall, wars begin, and peace treaties signed and broken. But she had never seen the council's members look so frightened. "Friends," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "we are here because our galaxy faces something unprecedented, something that challenges everything we thought we knew about our history." At her signal, the Great Dome, above them, filled with images. Recordings from a dozen different encounters. Ships that seemed to bend space around themselves. Rescue operations performed with technology that should not exist. And always, at the center of it all, the same impossible claim. "They say they are humans," Chancellor Brightstar continued. "The same species that the Zethkari claim to have destroyed 500,000 years ago, the same species our best historians say never existed." Ambassador Zethkar rose from his seat, his green scales bright with anger. "This is impossible. We destroyed them completely. Every world, every ship, every trace of their existence." "And yet," the Chancellor replied calmly, "here we are." Before anyone could respond, the lights in the chamber began to dim. Not the gradual dimming of a controlled system, but something else, something that made the hair on every being's neck stand up with primitive fear. "Chancellor," called the head of security, his voice tight with panic, "we're reading massive energy signatures. Something is approaching the station." "Impossible," declared the representative from the Silicon hierarchy. "Our defensive screens would stop any ship from getting close. Our sensors would detect any vessel long before it reached us." But even as he spoke, reality began to change in the center of the Great Hall. Space itself seemed to fold and twist. The air shimmered like water. And then, without any flash of light or rush of air, 3 figures simply appeared. The council members gasped and reached for weapons that were not there. Many jumped up from their seats. A few of the smaller species fainted from shock. But the 3 figures made no threatening moves. They simply stood in the center of the hall and waited. The first figure was an elderly woman who looked completely ordinary. She wore simple gray robes that could have come from any world in the galaxy. Her hair was white with age, and her face was lined with wrinkles. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a being who could fold space to travel instantly across the galaxy. The second figure was a man of middle years who wore what appeared to be armor, but the armor was unlike anything in the Council's databases. It seemed to be alive, shifting and flowing across his body like liquid metal. Occasionally, lights would pulse beneath its surface, as if blood made of starlight was flowing through hidden veins. The third figure was the most disturbing. It had once been human, but now it existed as something else entirely. Its consciousness lived within a crystalline matrix that floated in the air without any visible support. Energy patterns moved through the crystal like thoughts made visible. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Honored Council," the elderly woman said, her voice gentle but somehow carrying to every corner of the massive chamber without any amplification. "We thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am Arbiter Elena Vasquez, speaking for the Terran Remnant." Chancellor Brightstar found her voice first. "How did you get past our defenses? How did you appear in our most secure chamber?" Elena smiled, and the expression was both kind and deeply unsettling. "We have been here all along, Chancellor. We have been listening to your debates for centuries. We have been watching your decisions and learning from your mistakes. Physical barriers mean very little when you understand the true nature of space and time." The man in the living armor stepped forward. "I am Commander Marcus Steele, representative of those who chose the path of the warrior. We come in peace, but we come with knowledge of war that spans 500,000 years." The crystalline being pulsed with light as it spoke. "I am the entity you may call synthesis, speaking for those who transcended physical form entirely. We are here to correct a historical misconception." Ambassador Zethkar found his courage and stood up, pointing all four of his arms at the human delegation. "This is a trick, an illusion. Humans are extinct. We made sure of it." Elena turned to look at him, and her gentle smile never wavered. "Oh, Ambassador, you are half right. The humans you tried to destroy are indeed extinct. We are something else now." She gestured, and the air above the delegation filled with images. But these were not simple holograms. They were memories made visible, experiences given form, history that could be felt as well as seen. The Council watched in growing horror as the true story unfolded before them. 500,000 years ago, Elena began, your predecessors found us on Earth. We were young then, violent and short-sighted. As you said, we had just learned to reach for the stars, and we had not yet learned wisdom. The images showed ancient Earth as it had been. Blue oceans and green continents, cities full of bustling humans who looked just like Elena might have looked when she was young. It was beautiful and terrible and achingly real. We were not the threat you imagined, Elena continued. We were children playing with fire, not knowing how badly we might burn ourselves. But fear makes people do stupid things. Your ancestors decided we were too dangerous to live. The images shifted to show the war. Zethkari ships descending from the sky like angry gods, human cities burning, desperate battles fought in the darkness of space, children crying as their parents prepared for the end of everything. You almost succeeded, Commander Steele said, his voice hard as metal. You destroyed our worlds. You scattered our fleets. You reduced our population from billions to a few million survivors scattered across the galaxy. But you made one crucial mistake, Synthesis added, its crystalline form pulsing with colors that had no names. You assumed that destroying our bodies meant destroying us. Elena nodded. The survivors did not flee to distant galaxies as you expected. We did not hide in bunkers or try to rebuild what we had lost. Instead, we went deeper. Deeper? Chancellor Brightstar asked, though part of her did not want to know the answer. Into the spaces between spaces, Elena replied. Into dimensions folded within reality itself. Into the quantum foam that exists between the smallest particles of matter. into places where thought becomes substance and will becomes power. The images around them changed again. Now they showed something that hurt to look at directly, spaces that existed sideways to normal reality, beings that had once been human but were now something beyond physical form. Technologies that worked by convincing the universe to change its own rules. "We spent 500,000 years learning," Commander Steele explained. "Learning about the true nature of reality. Learning about the connections between all living things. Learning about power that comes not from weapons or armies, but from understanding the fundamental forces that hold existence together. We watched your civilizations rise and fall," Elena continued. "We saw the same patterns repeat over and over. The strong crushing the weak. Fear driving species to destroy what they did not understand. The galaxy growing larger but not wiser. Synthesis's crystalline form brightened. We decided that when we returned, we would be different, not just more powerful but better, wiser, more compassionate. We would be what we wished your ancestors had been." Ambassador Zethkar tried to interrupt. "This proves nothing. You could be anyone. You could be making all of this up." Elena turned to him again, and this time her smile was sad. "You want proof, Ambassador? Very well." She raised one hand, palm up. In her palm, a small sphere of light appeared. As the council watched, the light grew and changed, becoming a perfect, holographic representation of the Zethkari homeworld. But it was not the homeworld as it existed now. It was the homeworld from 500,000 years ago. Every detail was perfect, down to the clouds in the ancient sky and the primitive cities where young Zethkari had once lived in peace. "This is your world as it was when your ancestors first found us," Elena said softly. "Beautiful and full of life. Your people were artists then, philosophers, poets who wrote songs about the wonder of the stars." The hologram shifted, showing Zethkari beings who looked nothing like the armored warriors of today. These ancient Zethkari were smaller, gentler, with scales that shimmered with colors that spoke of joy and curiosity rather than war and conquest. "What happened to them?" Elena asked, though she clearly already knew the answer. "What turned a race of artists into a race of conquerors?" Ambassador Zethkar stared at the hologram, his 4 arms trembling. "How do you know this? These records were lost millions of years ago." "We were there," Elena replied simply. "We watched. We remembered. While your people forgot their own history and became the very thing they once feared, we kept the memory of who you used to be." She closed her hand, and the hologram vanished. "That is our gift, Ambassador. That is what 500,000 years of growth gave us. Perfect memory, perfect understanding, and the wisdom to know that destroying our enemies would make us no better than those who tried to destroy us." The chamber was silent except for the sound of beings trying to understand what they had just heard. Finally, Chancellor Brightstar found her voice. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Elena replied. "And everything. We want you to remember what you have forgotten. We want you to choose wisdom over fear. We want you to stop making the same mistakes that nearly destroyed us and that are destroying others now." "And if we refuse?" asked the representative from the warrior caste of Andromeda. Commander Steele answered, his living armor pulsing with dangerous light. "Then you will learn what 500,000 years of evolution can do to a species that was once hunted to the edge of extinction. But we hope it will not come to that," Elena added quickly. "We have seen enough war. We have seen enough death. We would prefer to help you become better than you are." Synthesis spoke for the first time in several minutes, its voice like music, made from mathematics. "The choice is yours, as it always has been. You can continue down the path of fear and conquest that leads only to mutual destruction. Or you can choose to grow beyond what you have been. We are offering you what we never had, Elena concluded. A chance to change, a chance to become worthy of the galaxy you claim to rule, a chance to learn that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to create. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many council members as she could. We are not here as conquerors. We are not here as judges. We are here as teachers, offering to share what we learned in our long exile. The question is, are you ready to learn? The silence that followed was deafening. In that silence, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, waiting to see whether wisdom or fear would win the day. The humans had returned, but they had returned as something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had transcended the need for revenge and chosen the harder path of forgiveness and growth. Whether the galaxy would accept that gift, or whether it would force the humans to show them what they had become through different means, remained to be seen. The war began not with a declaration, but with fear. 3 days after the human delegation vanished from the Galactic Council chambers, Admiral Deathstrike of the Zethkari Imperial Fleet received orders that would change the galaxy forever. The orders came directly from the High Command, written in the formal language of military necessity. Eliminate the human threat before it can spread. Use all available force. Show no mercy. Deathstrike read the orders 3 times, his scaled hands shaking slightly. He had commanded fleets for 200 years. He had conquered 17 worlds and destroyed 4 rebel governments. He had never been afraid of any enemy, but the humans frightened him in ways he could not explain. Still, orders were orders. Within hours, the largest fleet in Zethkari history was assembled. 5,000 warships, carrying weapons that could crack planets and shields that could deflect stars. The most advanced technology that 500,000 years of galactic civilization could produce. The fleet's target was a small system at the edge of known space, where long-range sensors had detected human activity. Intelligence reports suggested it was some kind of colony or outpost. Admiral Deathstrike planned to destroy it completely, then use the victory to show the galaxy that humans could be beaten. He could not have been more wrong. As the Zethkari fleet approached the target system, Admiral Deathstrike studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. The system contained 3 planets orbiting a yellow star. According to the reports, humans had established a base on the second planet. But the sensors showed no buildings, no cities, no spacecraft, no energy signatures that indicated any kind of civilization at all. Admiral, his sensor operator called. Out, I'm reading something strange. The second planet, it's not showing up as rock and metal. What do you mean? Sir, according to our deep scans, the entire planet appears to be organic, like it's alive. Admiral Deathstrike felt ice form in his veins. Show me. The main screen filled with an image of the planet. From space, it looked normal enough. Green and blue, with white clouds swirling through its atmosphere. But as the sensors penetrated deeper, the truth became clear. The planet did not have a core of molten metal like normal worlds. Instead, it had something that pulsed like a heartbeat. The continents were not made of rock, but of something that resembled biological tissue. The oceans moved in patterns that suggested conscious thought. Open a communication channel, Deathstrike ordered, though his voice was barely above a whisper. Channel open, sir. Attention, human colony. This is Admiral Deathstrike of the Zethkari Imperial Fleet. You are surrounded by 5,000 warships. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The response came not as a voice over the communication system, but as a presence in their minds. Every being on every ship in the fleet suddenly felt someone else thinking alongside their own thoughts. The presence was vast and ancient and completely alien to their experience. Admiral, the voice said, speaking directly into their consciousness. We greet you with sadness. We had hoped that wisdom would prevail, but we understand that some lessons can only be learned through experience. Who are you? Deathstrike demanded, though he was no longer sure he was speaking out loud or simply thinking very loudly. We are what humanity became when we stopped needing individual bodies. We are Sarah Chen, who once commanded a single ship. We are Marcus, Steel, who once wore armor to protect flesh that no longer exists. We are Elena Vasquez, who once spoke with the voice of an old woman. We are millions of others who chose to become something greater than the sum of our parts. The planet below then began to change. The green and blue surface rippled like water. The clouds started to spin in patterns that looked almost like writing. And from the planet's surface, something began to rise. It was not a ship in any sense that the Zethkari could understand. It was the planet itself, lifting away from its star and moving toward their fleet. A world that had become a single living being, powered by the combined will of an entire species. "This is impossible," Deathstrike whispered. "Impossibility is a limitation we transcended long ago," the planetary consciousness replied. "Admiral, we offer you one chance to reconsider. Your ships and crews will not be harmed if you choose to leave now. But if you insist on this course of action, we will show you what 500,000 years of growth can accomplish." Deathstrike looked around his bridge. His officers stared back at him with wide, frightened eyes. They all knew they were facing something beyond their understanding. But they were soldiers, and soldiers followed orders even when those orders led to disaster. "All ships," Deathstrike commanded, "open fire, maximum power." 5,000 Zethkari warships unleashed their weapons at the same moment. Energy beams that could melt asteroids, missiles that could crack moons, quantum torpedoes that could tear holes in space itself. Enough firepower to destroy 100 normal worlds struck the living planet simultaneously. The weapons had no effect whatsoever. The energy beams simply vanished as they touched the planet's surface, absorbed into something that used them as food. The missiles turned into flowers before they could explode, filling space with beautiful blossoms that sang in harmony. The quantum torpedoes became butterflies made of light, dancing through the void in patterns too complex for normal minds to follow. "Your turn," the planetary consciousness said gently. What happened next was not violence in any form the galaxy had ever seen. The human planet did not attack the Zethkari ships. Instead, it simply suggested that they might prefer to stop working. Throughout the fleet, weapons systems began to shut down, not because they were damaged or destroyed, but because the materials they were made from decided they would rather be something else. Metal became water, circuits became flowers, fusion reactors became gardens full of singing birds. But the life support systems continued to work perfectly. The crews were in no danger. They were simply no longer capable of fighting. "This is not possible," Deathstrike said, watching his mighty warship transform around him. His command chair had become a comfortable tree that supported him just as well as the original furniture. His control panels were now beds of soft moss that somehow still displayed all the information he needed. "You keep saying that word," the consciousness replied with what sounded like gentle amusement. "We do not think it means what you think it means." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as news of the confrontation spread. Other species who had allied themselves with the Zethkari sent their own fleets to join the fight. The EI warrior caste of Andromeda dispatched their most feared battle groups. The Silicon hierarchy contributed their most advanced AI-controlled dreadnoughts. The Hive Queens sent swarms of bioships that could reproduce themselves during combat. All of them met the same fate. Their weapons turned into art. Their ships became gardens. Their crews found themselves unharmed but completely unable to fight. And always, the humans offered the same choice: learn wisdom or learn what it meant to face beings who had transcended the need for traditional warfare. Most chose to keep fighting. It was what they knew. It was what they had always done when faced with something they did not understand. The war spread throughout the galaxy, but it was unlike any conflict in recorded history. There were no casualties, no destroyed worlds, no refugees fleeing burning cities. Instead, there was transformation on a scale that defied comprehension. Wherever the humans appeared, they brought change. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources suddenly bloomed with new life. Species that had been enslaved found themselves free and protected. Pirates and raiders discovered that their weapons would only work to create beauty, not destruction. The tide turned when the human consciousness that had once been the planet revealed its true nature. It was not a single transformed world, but billions of human beings who had chosen to merge their minds and bodies into something that could exist as living space itself. We became the void between stars, Elena Vasquez's voice explained to the terrified galaxy. We became the dark matter that holds galaxies together. We became the quantum foam that underlies all reality. We did not just survive your attempts to destroy us. We became the universe itself. The final confrontation came when the combined fleets of every major species in the galaxy assembled for one last desperate attack. Trillions of beings in millions of ships, carrying weapons that could unmake entire solar systems. They found themselves facing not a planet or a fleet, but a section of space itself that had become aware. Stars that pulsed with human thoughts, nebulae that sang with human voices, dark matter that moved with human purpose. We offer you one final choice, the cosmic humanity said, their voice coming from everywhere at once. Join us in growth, or watch as we remake reality according to our vision of what it should be. Some species chose to fight to the very end. They watched as their most powerful weapons turned into poetry written in languages of pure mathematics. They saw their mightiest warships become mobile gardens that traveled between stars, spreading life and beauty wherever they went. Others chose wisdom. They laid down their arms and asked to learn. They discovered that the humans were not conquerors, but teachers, offering to share the knowledge they had gained in their long exile. The gentle wanderers were among the first to accept the humans' offer. Their natural compassion made them easy students. They learned to grow plants that could live in the vacuum of space and create art that could be seen from other galaxies. Even some of the Zethkari eventually chose to learn, rather than fight. They discovered that their ancestors' artistic nature had not been destroyed, only buried under centuries of militaristic culture. With human help, they began to remember how to create instead of conquer. The war ended not with victory or defeat, but with transformation. The galaxy discovered that there were worse things than extinction and better things than survival. There was evolution beyond the physical. There was growth beyond the imaginable. There was wisdom that came only through choosing to be better than what you had been. In the end, the humans had kept their promise from 500,000 years ago. They had survived. They had remembered. And they had returned. But they had returned not as the violent, short-sighted species that had once threatened their neighbors. They had returned as gardeners of reality itself, offering to help the galaxy grow beyond its primitive understanding of power and conflict. Some accepted the offer. Others chose to remain as they were, but under the gentle guidance of beings who had learned that true strength came from knowing when not to use it. And in the spaces between stars, where human consciousness now lived as part of the fundamental structure of the universe, there was finally peace, not the peace of the grave, but the peace of a garden where all things could grow according to their nature, protected by guardians who had learned that the greatest victory was not to conquer, but to nurture. The galaxy had laughed when the Zethkari boasted of their ancient conquest. The laughter had stopped when the humans returned, but in its place came something better. The quiet satisfaction of beings who had learned that some wars are won not by fighting, but by becoming too wise to need to fight at all. The dangerous war was over. The age of gardening had begun.
Commander Trell stared at the flashing red lights on the main control panel. The warning sounds filled the bridge of the massive ship. 17 ships of the Novan exploration fleet now floated helplessly in the empty space. All ships had lost power to their main engines at the same time. "Report," Trell said, trying to keep a calm voice. The commander's blue skin seemed to darken with worry. Officer Mika rushed to Trell's side, holding a data pad. "Bad news, Commander. The quantum drives on all ships are failing. We can't make jumps anymore. We're stuck here." Trell looked out the large window at the star field around them. They had traveled far beyond the known routes. No Novan ship had ever come this far into uncharted space. "How much power do we have left?" Trell asked. "Life support systems are working on backup power. We have food and air for about 3 months," Mika answered. "After that..." The science officer didn't finish the sentence. There was no need. 4,000 crew members spread across 17 ships were now facing a slow death in the cold emptiness of space. The Novan fleet had been mapping new star systems when they entered a strange area of space that somehow damaged all their quantum drives at once. Trell walked to the center of the bridge. "Call all ship captains to a meeting and prepare our long-range signal device. We need to send out a distress call." One of the bridge crew looked up with sad eyes. "Commander, there's no one to hear us. The nearest Novan outpost is 2 years away at normal speed. Without our quantum drives, we can't get there." "I know," Trell said, "but we still have to try." In a small, dim room filled with humming machines, Lieutenant Jack Rivera sat with his feet up on his desk. Working the night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station Epsilon was usually boring. Most nights, Jack just watched the automatic systems do their job detecting signals from space. He sipped his coffee and looked at the screen showing different parts of space. Earth had only started putting these monitoring stations in far parts of the solar system in the last 10 years. Humans were still new to deep space travel compared to the handful of alien races they had met. Suddenly, one of his screens lit up with an alert. Jack put down his coffee and sat up straight. The computer had found something unusual, a signal pattern it couldn't identify. "That's weird," Jack muttered. He tapped some keys to get more information. The signal was coming from a region of space where no human ships were traveling. It wasn't a known pattern from any of the 3 alien species humans had met before. Jack looked at the signal pattern more carefully. There was something about it, a repeating pattern that reminded him of distress calls. After studying it for a few minutes, he was sure. "This is a cry for help," he said to himself. Jack reached for the communication button. "This is Lieutenant Rivera at Station Epsilon. I need to speak to Dr. Bell immediately. We've picked up what looks like a distress signal from an unknown source." Dr. Amara Bell had been sleeping when the call came. Now she stood in the station's main control room looking at the signal data Jack had found. "You were right to call me," she said. "This is definitely a distress signal, and it's not from any species we know." "What do we do?" Jack asked. Dr. Bell thought for a moment. "We need to tell Earth Command right away. This could be first contact with a new alien species." Within hours, the signal had been sent to Earth. The highest-ranking officials in the Unified Space Command gathered in an emergency meeting in Geneva. Admiral Huang, the head of all Earth space operations, stood before the assembled leaders. His face was serious as he explained the situation. "The signal comes from a location about 3 weeks away at our fastest speed. Our best analysis suggests it's from a group of ships in distress. We don't know who they are or what kind of help they need, but they're definitely calling for help." A woman in a gray suit spoke up. "Admiral, we should be careful. This could be a trap. We know very little about what's out there." The Admiral nodded. "That's true, Director Chen, but consider this. If we ignore a genuine cry for help, what does that say about us? About humanity?" The room grew quiet as everyone thought about this question. "We have a chance here," the Admiral continued. "A chance to show who we are as a species. Yes, there's risk, but I believe the greater risk is turning our backs on someone who needs our help, whoever they are." One by one, the leaders voted. The decision was made. Earth would respond to the distress call. Back on the Novan command ship, the mood had grown dark. 2 weeks had passed since they sent out their distress signal. No one really expected an answer. Trell sat alone in the commander's quarters, looking at pictures of family members who were waiting back home. The thought of never seeing them again was hard to accept. A sudden knock on the door interrupted these sad thoughts. "Come in," Trell called. Officer Mika rushed in, breathing hard. "Commander, you need to come to the bridge right now." "What is it?" Trell asked, standing up quickly. Mika's face showed excitement. "We're getting a response to our distress signal." Trell followed Mika to the bridge at a run. The main screen showed a signal pattern they had never seen before. "Where is it coming from?" Trell asked. The communications officer pointed to a star map. "From this direction, Commander. And it's getting stronger. Whatever sent it is coming toward us." "Can we translate it?" Trell asked. "We're trying," the officer said. "It doesn't match any language in our database." Hours passed as the Novan computers worked to decode the strange message. Finally, the translation system began to make sense of it. "This is Captain Morgan Reed of the Earth vessel Horizon. We have received your distress signal and are coming to offer assistance. Please respond if you can hear this message." The bridge crew looked at each other in shock. "Earth? What is Earth?" one of them asked. Trell moved closer to the screen. "It seems we're about to find out." On the bridge of the Horizon, Captain Morgan Reed waited anxiously for a response. Behind her ship, 5 more human vessels followed. They carried engineers, scientists, medical staff, and supplies, everything they could think of to help an unknown species in trouble. "Do you think they understood us?" asked her first officer, Alex. "I hope so," Morgan said. "We've been broadcasting, in every format we could think of." The communications officer suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, we're getting a response." The bridge crew fell silent as a strange voice came through the speakers. The words were oddly accented but understandable. "This is Commander Trell of the Novan Exploration Fleet. We are 17 vessels with 4,000 crew members. Our quantum drives have failed and we are stranded. We did not expect anyone to hear our call." Captain Reed smiled and pressed the response button. "Well, Commander Trell, today is your lucky day. Humanity is here to help." As the Horizon moved closer to the massive alien ships ahead, neither the humans nor the Novans knew they were about to start a friendship that would change the future of both their worlds forever. Captain Morgan Reed stood on the bridge of the Horizon, watching the massive alien ships through the main view screen. The Novan vessels were huge compared to the human ships, each one at least 3 times larger than the Horizon. Their hulls were smooth and silver, with strange blue lights running along their sides. "They're beautiful," whispered Alex, the first officer. Morgan nodded. "And in trouble. Let's prepare the shuttle for meeting. We need to follow first contact protocols." After talking with Commander Trell through simple messages, both sides had agreed to meet in the space between their fleets. The humans would send a small team on a shuttle, and the Novans would do the same. "Who's going?" Alex asked. "Me," Morgan said firmly. "And Alan Park from the first contact team. He's our best language specialist, and Dr. Lewis for medical assessment." Alex looked worried. "Captain, maybe you should stay on the ship. We don't know if—" Morgan cut him off with a raised hand. "This is too important. Our mission is peaceful, and I need to show them that by being there myself." An hour later, Morgan sat in the small shuttle as it moved away from the Horizon. Through the window, she could see another shuttle leaving one of the Novan ships. Both small vessels moved slowly toward a point in empty space between the fleets. Alan Park sat beside her, looking excited. "This is history, Captain. The first meeting with a completely new alien species." Dr. Lewis was checking medical equipment. "I hope our biology isn't too different. It would be good to understand their basic needs." The shuttle reached the meeting point and stopped. The Novan shuttle was getting closer. Now they could see it clearly. It was shaped differently from human shuttles, more like a smooth water drop. "Nervous?" Alan asked. Morgan took a deep breath. "A little, but mostly curious." The Novan shuttle stopped about 30 meters away. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a door opened on the side of the alien vessel. The humans watched as three figures in strange suits floated out and used small jets on their backs to move toward the human shuttle. "They're coming to us," Dr. Lewis said. "That's a good sign." Morgan stood up. "Let's meet them properly." She moved to the airlock and pressed the button to open the outer door. Commander Trell looked at the human ship through the shuttle window. It was smaller than expected, but Trell could see it was well built. These humans might not have the advanced technology of the Novans, but they clearly knew how to build good ships. "Are you sure about this?" asked Mika, who had insisted on coming along. "We need their help," Trell answered simply. And they came a long way to offer it. The third member of their team, Medical Officer Wren, was checking the translation devices they would use. "The language program has been updated with what we've learned from their messages. It should work better now." When their shuttle stopped near the human vessel, Trell made a decision. "We'll go to them. It shows trust." The three Novans put on their spacesuits and moved through the vacuum toward the human shuttle. As they got closer, Trell could see figures watching from the windows. Then a door opened in the side of the shuttle. A human in a white spacesuit floated in the doorway and raised a hand in what seemed like a greeting. Trell copied the gesture. Morgan watched as the three aliens moved gracefully toward the shuttle. Their spacesuits were unlike human ones, thinner and more flexible. Through the clear helmets, she could see their faces. They looked almost human, but with key differences. Their skin seemed to glow slightly blue, and their eyes were larger with no visible whites. When the lead alien raised a hand in response to her greeting, Morgan felt a wave of relief. Some gestures, it seemed, might be universal. She spoke into her helmet mic. "Welcome. Please come inside. We have a small room where we can talk." The translation system in her helmet converted her words and sent them to the alien suits. There was a pause. Then the lead alien nodded and moved forward. Once, all three aliens were inside and the airlock was closed. They removed their helmets. Morgan did the same, along with Alan and Dr. Lewis. Up close, the differences were more noticeable. The alien's skin had a slight shimmer to it, changing color slightly as they moved. They had no hair, and their ears were smaller than human ones. But they had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, much like humans. "I am Captain Morgan Reed of the Earthship Horizon," Morgan said, touching her chest. The translation device on the table between them hummed, then spoke in a flat voice. The lead alien stepped forward. "I am Commander Trell of the Novan Exploration Fleet." Trell's voice sounded musical, with strange tones that the translation device couldn't fully capture. Trell introduced the others, Science Officer Mika and Medical Officer Wren. Morgan did the same with her team. "Please tell us what happened to your fleet," Morgan said once the introductions were done. Trell explained about the strange space anomaly that had damaged all their quantum drives. As Trell spoke, Mika showed 3D models on a small device, helping the humans understand the problem. Alan leaned forward, fascinated. "Your technology is far more advanced than ours. We don't have quantum drives yet." Trell looked surprised. "Then how did you reach us so quickly?" "We have fusion drives," Morgan explained. "They're slower than what you describe, but they got us here." Mika seemed confused. "But if your technology is less advanced, how do you think you can help us?" Alan smiled. "Sometimes a fresh perspective helps, and sometimes simpler technology can solve complex problems." The meeting lasted for 3 hours. By the end, both teams were speaking more freely, the translation devices working better as they learned more of each other's languages. Dr. Lewis and Wren had exchanged basic medical information, discovering surprising similarities in their biology. Despite their different appearances, both species needed oxygen, though the Novans could tolerate higher carbon dioxide levels. "We would like to bring a larger team to examine your ships," Morgan suggested. "Engineers who might be able to help with your drive problems." Trell seemed hesitant. "Your offer is generous, but I must be careful with my people's safety." Morgan nodded. "I understand completely. You don't know us yet. What if we start with just information exchange? We can share what we know and you can tell us more about your drives." Maybe together we can find a solution. Trell's skin shifted to a lighter blue, a reaction the humans didn't yet understand. That seems reasonable. As they prepared to return to their ships, Trell stopped Morgan with a light touch on her arm. "There is something I don't understand," the Novan commander said. "Why did you come? We are strangers to you. Our civilizations have never met before." Morgan thought for a moment. "When we heard your call for help, we had a choice. We could ignore it or we could answer. That's not really a choice at all. If someone needs help and you can give it, you help. That's what makes us, well, human." Trell was quiet for a moment. "Perhaps that is what makes us people, whether human or Novan." For the first time since the meeting began, Morgan felt truly hopeful. Different as they were, there might be something fundamental that connected them after all. As the shuttle carried Morgan and her team back to the horizon, she stared out at the massive Novan fleet. This was just the beginning of what promised to be an extraordinary adventure. Within a week of first contact, more human ships arrived. The Earth government had sent everything they could: engineers, scientists, supplies, and raw materials. Captain Morgan Reed watched from the bridge of the horizon as the new ships approached the Novan fleet. "5 more ships," Alex said, standing beside her. "Command really sent everything we asked for." Morgan nodded. "This is the biggest thing to happen to humanity since we discovered we weren't alone in the universe." Working with the Novans had been challenging but rewarding. After the first meeting, Commander Trell had allowed small human teams to visit the Novan ships. In return, Novan specialists had come to the human vessels to learn about Earth technology. "The shuttle is ready to take you to the command ship," Alex said. "The joint team is waiting." The large meeting room on the Novan command ship was filled, with both humans and Novans. The walls displayed technical diagrams and data screens. At the center of the room, a hologram showed the strange particles that had damaged the Novan quantum drives. Morgan entered the room alongside Commander Trell. They had spent much time together over the past week, building trust between their people. "Let's hear the latest update," Trell said, skin shifting to a formal green color that humans had learned meant serious business. Raj Patel, the lead human engineer, stood up. He was a small man with quick hands and a brilliant mind. "We've been studying the quantum drive components with the Novan engineers. Their technology is amazing, at least 40 years ahead of anything we have on Earth." Mika, the Novan science officer, joined him. "The human approach to problems is different from ours. They think in ways we do not." Raj smiled at this. "The Novans build perfect systems. Every part works in harmony with every other part. It's beautiful engineering. But when one thing goes wrong, everything fails." Mika finished. "Our systems are too connected. When the strange particles affected one part of the drive, the damage spread everywhere. And that's where our less advanced technology might actually help," Raj explained. "Human systems are more, well, messy. We build with backups and workarounds. We expect things to fail sometimes." Trell looked at Morgan. "Your engineer is saying that human technology is better because it is worse?" Morgan laughed. "Not exactly, just different. We've had to solve problems differently because we don't have your advanced materials and theory." Raj turned to the hologram display. "We think we can help shield your quantum drives from the strange particles using a special metal alloy we developed for our deep space probes. It's not as elegant as your technology, but it might work." "How long will it take?" Trell asked. "That's the hard part," Raj admitted. "We need to rebuild key components of all 17 ships, with both our teams working together, maybe 2 months." The room grew quiet. The Novans only had enough supplies for 3 months when they first sent their distress call. 1 month had already passed. "Then we have no time to waste," Trell said firmly. The work began immediately. Human engineers and Novan technicians worked side by side in the engine rooms of the massive alien ships. At first, communication was difficult. The translation devices helped with words, but technical concepts were harder to explain. Slowly, they began to understand each other better. The humans were amazed by the Novan technology. quantum computers that could process information faster than anything on Earth, materials that could change their properties on command, and energy systems that were incredibly efficient. The Novans were equally impressed by human creativity. Where Novan engineers might spend days looking for a perfect solution, humans would try quick fixes and improvise with whatever was available. "You adapt so quickly," Mika told Raj as they worked on a drive component. "Our education system teaches us to follow established patterns. Yours seems to encourage, what do you call it? Thinking outside the box," Raj said with a smile. "It's a human saying. It means looking for answers in unexpected places." As the days passed, more than technology was exchanged. The human crews organized shared meals with the Novans, introducing them to Earth foods and trying Novan dishes in return. Some foods were impossible for the other species to eat, but many were enjoyable to both. Music was shared too. Novan music used tones that human ears could barely hear, but the patterns were beautiful. Human music seemed primitive but emotionally powerful to the Novans. "Your music makes my skin change color without my control," one Novan told a human musician after hearing classical Earth music for the first time. Not everything went smoothly. A group of Novans remained suspicious of the humans and their motives. "Why would they help us for nothing in return?" asked Vin, a senior Novan officer, during a private meeting with Trell. "No species does this." "Perhaps humans are different," Trell suggested. "Or perhaps they want our technology," Vin countered. "They learn our systems while pretending to help." Trell's skin darkened with concern. "I've spent time with Captain Reed. I believe their intentions are good." "You are too trusting, Commander," Vin said. Similar concerns existed among some humans. Captain Reed overheard two engineers talking when they thought no one was listening. "Should we really be helping them rebuild their ships?" one asked. "What if they turn against us once they're fixed? Or what if they share what they learn about us with other alien species?" the other added. "We could be putting Earth at risk, Morgan." "Approach them." "Those are fair concerns," she said, making them jump in surprise. "But think about it this way. They already have far better technology than we do. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done it already." The engineers looked embarrassed. "Sorry, Captain. It's just that they're different," Morgan finished for them. "I know. But in the ways that matter, I think we're very similar." 2 weeks into the collaboration, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tom Garcia was not a scientist or an engineer. He was a mechanic who worked on the Horizon's shuttle engines. He had volunteered to help with basic tasks on the Novan ships. While watching Novan engineers discuss a problem with the shield design, Tom had an idea. He sketched it quickly on his tablet and showed it to Raj. "The Novans are trying to create a perfect shield," Tom explained. "But what if we make an imperfect one on purpose? Something that can flex and adapt when those strange particles hit it." Raj studied the rough drawing. This might actually work. It's completely against Novan design philosophy, but that's exactly why they haven't thought of it." That evening, Raj presented Tom's idea to the joint team. The Novan engineers were confused at first. It went against everything they had been taught about proper design. "It's intentionally flawed," one Novan engineer said, skin turning purple with confusion. "Exactly," Raj agreed. "It's meant to bend, not break. To absorb the particles rather than block them perfectly." Commander Trell looked at the design, then at the human mechanic who had created it. "Will it work?" Mika, who had been studying the plan, answered. "It is strange, but the math supports it. I think it might." For the first time since the crisis began, real hope spread through the Novan fleet. The humans hadn't just brought help, they had brought a completely new way of solving problems. That night, as Morgan prepared to return to her ship, Trell stopped her. "Your people continue to surprise us," the Novan commander said. "This solution, it would never have occurred to any Novan." Morgan smiled. "That's the value of different perspectives. Together, we're stronger than either of us alone." As she flew back to the horizon in the small shuttle, Morgan looked out at the stars. Two species from different worlds, working together to overcome a crisis. It was exactly what she had joined Earth's space fleet hoping to find. Not just new worlds, but new friends. The new shield design created by Tom Garcia changed everything. For 3 weeks, human and Novan teams worked day and night to build a prototype. The work was difficult, combining two very different types of technology, but everyone understood what was at stake. Morgan watched from an observation room as the final tests began on the first repaired drive. Raj and Mika stood in the engine room below, surrounded by both human and Novan engineers. The tension in the air was almost visible. "Start the power-up sequence," Raj said into his communicator. Inside the massive engine room, lights began to flicker on. The quantum drive core, a beautiful blue sphere suspended in the center of the room, started to glow softly. "Power at 10%, reported a Novan technician. "All readings normal." Mika's skin rippled with nervous yellow patterns. "Increase to 20%. The blue sphere grew brighter. The human-designed shield around it, an ugly, bulky ring of special metals, seemed to pulse slightly. 30%, Raj called out. "How are the shield readings?" A human engineer checked her tablet. "Shield is holding. No sign of particle damage." The power levels continued to climb. 50%, 70%. At each stage, the team checked readings and looked for signs of the strange particles that had caused the original failure. 90%, Mika announced, voice tight with tension. Morgan held her breath. This was the moment of truth. If the shield could protect the drive at full power, they had a real solution. "Full power," Raj ordered. The quantum drive core blazed with brilliant blue light. The shield around it glowed red at points where particles struck it, but it held strong. For 10 seconds, everyone was silent, watching the readings. Then, 20 seconds. At 30 seconds, Raj looked up at the observation window and gave a thumbs-up sign. "It's working," he shouted, his voice filled with excitement. The room erupted in cheers. Humans high-fived each other while Novans touched palms in their own celebration gesture. Morgan saw Mika's skin turn a bright, happy orange, a color she had never seen on any Novan before. The success of the prototype meant that their plan could work. But they still faced an enormous task. 17 massive ships needed their quantum drives rebuilt with the new shield design. Each ship had multiple drives, and each drive needed the special human-made shield. Commander Trell called a meeting of all ship captains and project leaders. "We have a working solution," Trell announced, "but we need to work faster. At our current pace, it will take 4 months to repair all ships. And we have less than 2 months of supplies left," added a Novan captain. Morgan stepped forward. "We've contacted Earth. More ships are coming with food and materials. But Commander Trell is right. We need to speed up the work." Raj had been thinking about this problem. What if we don't fix all the ships at once? What if we focus on getting one ship working first? Then it could take some of your people to the nearest safe location and come back for more. The Novans looked at each other. The idea of separating their fleet went against their protocols. "It's too risky," said Captain Vin, who still didn't fully trust the humans. "What if the drive fails again while the ship is far from help?" "We could send a human ship alongside it," Morgan suggested, "for backup." Trell considered this. The nearest safe location is a small trading outpost about 1 week's travel by quantum jump. If we repaired the smallest ship first, it could take 200 crew there and return. "With your permission," Raj said, "we could start work on that ship immediately. We already have enough shield material ready." Trell's skin shifted through several colors as the commander thought. "Very well, we will adapt to the situation." The next day, teams moved to the smallest Novan ship. The human engineers had gotten better at working with Novan technology, and the Novan technicians had learned to accept the strange human approaches. Tom Garcia, whose idea had made everything possible, worked alongside Vex, a young Novan engineer who had been the quickest to embrace human methods. "This connection here," Tom explained, showing a joint where human metal met Novan technology. "It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be strong enough to flex when those particles hit it." Vex nodded, understanding now. "Like a tree. branch in the wind, not like a stone wall that can break. Exactly. Tom smiled. You're getting it. Vex's skin turned a thoughtful blue. On my world, we are taught that perfection is the highest goal. But watching you humans work, I wonder if adapting is more important than being perfect. Tom shrugged as he tightened a bolt. Where I grew up, we had a saying. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. Sometimes trying to make something perfect stops you from making something that works. Meanwhile, Morgan and Trell had another challenge. Food supplies were running low on the Novan ships. The humans had brought as much as they could, but not all of it was safe for Novans to eat. Diana Chen, the human medical officer, worked with Ren, her Novan counterpart, to test which Earth foods the Novans could digest. This fruit should be safe, Diana said, showing a container of apples. It has similar sugars to your food. Ren used a small device to scan the apple. The skin might cause mild digestive discomfort, but the inside appears compatible. They found that many basic Earth foods, rice, certain vegetables, and some fruits, could help extend the Novan supplies. It wasn't ideal, but it would buy them more time. 2 weeks of intense work went by. The small Novan ship's drives were nearly ready. The human Novan teams had worked around the clock, with engineers often sleeping near their workstations. Final power test today, Raj told Morgan as they ate a quick breakfast. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. If all goes well, the ship can make its first jump tomorrow. Morgan put a hand on his shoulder. You've done amazing work, Raj. All of you have. Later that day, the entire command team gathered on the bridge of the small Novan ship. Captain Vin would pilot the vessel on its test flight, with a mixed crew of Novans and humans. Begin final power sequence, Vin ordered. The ship hummed as the quantum drives powered up. On the main screen, they could see the status of each drive system. One by one, they turned green. All drives at full power, reported a Novan officer. Shield systems holding. Vin looked at Trell, who nodded approval. Take us out slowly. For the first time in nearly 2 months, a Novan ship moved under its own power. It glided away from the rest of the fleet, its engines glowing blue against the darkness of space. Prepare for short-range quantum jump, Vin said. Target is 5,000 kilometers ahead. Everyone held their breath. This was the real test. The ship had to do more than power up. It had to actually jump through space. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Vin pressed the control. The ship shimmered for a moment, then vanished. On the command ship's screen, it reappeared instantly at the target location. After a moment of stunned silence, cheers erupted across the fleet. Humans and Novans celebrated together, the barriers between their species seeming to fade away in that moment of triumph. The small ship returned at normal speed, moving back to its place in the fleet formation. When Captain Vin returned to the command ship, even the usually serious officer was smiling. The jump was perfect, Vin reported. Smoother than before, actually. The human shield seems to stabilize the quantum field. Commander Trell looked at Morgan. It seems our impossible problem had a solution after all. We just needed, outside-the-box thinking. Morgan smiled. Tomorrow, the ship can make its first long jump to the trading outpost. We'll have a human vessel follow, at fusion speed as backup. Trell's skin turned a warm purple color. Captain Reed, Morgan, I don't know if my people can ever repay yours for what you've done. Morgan shook her head. That's not how friendship works, Commander. You don't keep score. 3 months after the humans first arrived, the work was nearly complete. 12 of the 17 Novan ships now had working quantum drives with the special human shields. The smaller ships had been fixed first, making trips to the nearby trading outpost to bring back supplies and spread the word that the Novan fleet was safe. The morning of the final repair on the command ship, Morgan stood with Trell on the observation deck. Through the large window, they could see the stars and the human fleet nearby. When we leave here, Trell said quietly, everything will change. For both our peoples. Morgan nodded. I think it already has. The journey had not been easy. There, had been technical problems, food shortages, and cultural misunderstandings. But they had overcome each challenge together. Now, as the work neared its end, both humans and Novans were thinking about what would come next. "My government has sent a message," Morgan said. "They want to establish formal relations with your people. Trade, cultural exchange, scientific, cooperation, everything." Trell's skin rippled with thoughtful blue patterns. "Our High Council says the same." They were surprised by what happened here. Novans have met other species before, but never found such willing helpers. "What will you tell them about us?" Morgan asked. Trell turned to face her. "The truth. That humans are strange, unpredictable, sometimes messy, and the best allies we could hope for." Later that day, the final tests began on the command ship's quantum drives. This was the largest ship in the fleet and the most complex to repair. Raj and his team had worked for 2 weeks on the massive engine room. "Start power sequence," ordered Chief Engineer Lorne, the Novan in charge of the ship's engines. The enormous quantum core began to glow. Unlike the other ships, the command vessel had 5 cores, all of which needed to work together perfectly. "Power at 20%, reported a human technician. "Shield readings stable." Raj watched the readings carefully. They had modified the TAIS shield design for the larger cores, making it more flexible. The design had been a true collaboration, Novan precision with human adaptability. 50% power, Lorne called. "All systems nominal." Mika stood beside Raj, monitoring the data. "The particle levels are higher here than on the other ships," she observed. "The shield is working harder." "It can handle it," Raj said with confidence. That's what it was designed to do. The power level continued to rise. 80%. 90. As they approached full power, Lorne looked at Raj. "Your shield design has saved our fleet," the Novan engineer said. "Our people will not forget this." "It wasn't just my design," Raj corrected him. "It was Tom's idea and your team's expertise. We did it together." "Full power," announced a technician. The 5 quantum cores blazed with bright blue light. The shields around them glowed at points where the strange particles struck them, but they held firm. "All systems at full capacity," Mika reported, her skin turning bright orange with joy. "The command ship is ready." That evening, a celebration was held in the command ship's great hall. Humans and Novans gathered together, sharing food, drink, and stories. For many, this would be their last night together before the fleets parted. Ways. Captain Vin, who had once been so suspicious of the humans, now moved easily among them, even trying some Earth foods. Tom and Vex sat together, already making plans for future engineering collaborations. Commander Trell called for silence, then addressed the gathered crews. "When we sent our distress call, we had little hope of rescue. Our fleet was far from home, in uncharted space. Then humanity answered. You came without knowing us, without any obligation to help. You shared your knowledge, your resources, and your friendship." Trell's skin turned a formal, deep purple. "Today, I am honored to announce that the Novan High Council has approved the creation of a formal alliance with Earth. Our peoples will share knowledge, trade, and exploration. The humans have earned our trust and our gratitude." Morgan stepped forward when Trell gestured to her. "On behalf of Earth, I accept this alliance with great hope for our future together. What began as a rescue mission has become something much more important, the beginning of a lasting friendship between our worlds." The hall erupted in cheers. For many of the crew members, the past 3 months had changed their view of the universe. They had learned that different species could work together, could trust each other, could become friends. Early the next morning, final preparations began for the fleets to depart. The Novan ships would return to their home territories, while most of the human vessels would head back to Earth. But something had changed in the plans. Morgan found Trell on the bridge of the command ship. "I've just received new orders from Earth Command," she said. "The Horizon will accompany your fleet to the Novan border as a goodwill gesture, and they're sending an ambassador with us." Trell looked pleased. "The High Council is sending representatives to meet us as well. They're eager to formalize our new alliance. There's more, Morgan added. Earth is offering scholarships for young Novans to study at our universities, and they're asking if Novan teachers would consider visiting Earth to share your knowledge. Our council has made a similar offer, Trell replied. They would welcome human students and teachers. As they spoke, the final loading operations were underway. Human and Novan crews exchanged small gifts, personal items to remember each other by. Many had formed close friendships during their time together. Diana, the human medical officer, gave Ren a collection of Earth medical texts. In return, the Novan doctor presented her with a small device that could analyze biological compounds, technology that would advance human medicine by years. Tom gave Vex his personal toolkit, simple mechanical tools that the Novan engineer had come to appreciate. Vex pressed a small crystal into Tom's hand in return. "What is it?" Tom asked, holding up the glowing blue crystal. "A memory stone," Vex explained. "It records experiences. This one holds our work together, so you will not forget." "I could never forget this," Tom said with a smile. The time for departure finally came. The Novan fleet, with all ships now repaired and fully functional, prepared to make their first synchronized quantum jump in months. The Horizon and 2 other human ships would travel with them, while the rest of the human fleet returned to Earth. On the bridge of the command ship, Trell and Morgan stood side by side. Through the view screen, they could see the stars that had once seemed like a prison to the stranded fleet. Now those same stars offered a path home and a promise of new journeys together. "Ready for quantum jump," announced the Novan navigator. Trell looked at Morgan. "Are your ships prepared?" Morgan nodded. "The Horizon is ready to follow you wherever you go." "All ships report ready, Commander," said the communications officer. Trell took a moment to look around the bridge. Humans worked alongside Novans at several stations, the beginning of the exchange program that would continue for years to come. "Begin jump sequence," Trell ordered. As the stars outside began to blur, Morgan thought about the journey they had made together. A distress call answered. Strangers becoming allies, allies becoming friends. What had started as a rescue had become much more, the beginning of a new chapter for both their peoples. No longer alone in the vastness of space, but moving forward, together into an uncertain but hopeful future. The ships vanished into quantum space, leaving behind only the memory of a fleet once stranded, and the humanity that had come to help.